The Battlehosts. Be a better gamer, build a better community.
Welcome to Battlehosts, a podcast and website dedicated to helping you become a better 40K gamer and to build a better community of players. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight is Matt.
Hello.
And Evan.
Howdy.
If you like what you hear, subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube to catch all the latest episodes. You can follow us on Facebook under The Battlehosts. If you'd like to support The Battlehosts for as little as $1 a month, please visit patreon.com/TheBattlehosts. If you join for $3 a month, you get access to our Discord chat where we discuss all things related to the hobby. So, Evan, we brought you back on because you did a Tyranid episode with us.
That's true.
And tonight we're going to talk about Genestealer Cult. And Genestealer Cult is, to me, it's one of the newer armies, but it's also probably the most unique army in 40K. There isn't any other army that acts like Genestealer Cult.
Closest I would say would be Dark Eldar, but it's like two ends of the bell curve.
Yeah. It's just such an interesting, it's just unique. They did a good job creating a very interesting army with this.
Unique's a way of putting it.
Yeah.
As we're talking about this, and we're talking about the rules, if your eyes are going crossed, you are in the norm because Genestealer Cult have rules on rules, and they're very tricky. They're considered to be kind of the thinking man's army.
There's a lot to absorb.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, they have a very low floor.
Yeah.
You can play them very badly, but they also have a very high ceiling. You can play them very well if you're very meticulous with your specific phases that we'll get into. But it is a very interesting army.
Takes a lot of practice.
Yeah. The only other one that I would think that it would be comparable to was Ynnari before Ynnari was nerfed, because Ynnari you had to think like 2-3 turns ahead of time you were a glass hammer, a glass cannon. But
this is even more glass cannon-y, hammery than anything really.
It's like a horde. It's like a horde glass cannon. So which is funny to say, but
yeah, there you have it. It's also the only army that can ally with Tyranids. So
that's
there
true.
You have it then.
That's why I play them.
That's why. Yeah, if you're a Tyranid player, it's really easy to sort of slip into Genestealer Cult because it makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah.
So this is part one, and we always do these as 2-part episodes. We're going to talk about the history and lore of Genestealer Cults, their army rules, and the cult creeds. Part 2, we'll talk about the specific units, although obviously we'll talk units a little bit in this episode. Power, stratagems, and traits, and we'll actually cover a couple different interesting lists that are very different from each other, and a little bit about how to get started with Genestealer Cult. Genestealer Cult has the newest plastics, some of the newest, best models out. I mean, it's really, really good stuff. So much so that you see a lot of the Genestealer Cults are often used as guard conversions just because they are the newest guard-looking things that are out there.
That's true.
So, yeah. All right, so before we jump into Genestealer Cult, let's hear a word from our sponsor, DGT.
We all love Warhammer 40K, but sometimes games just take too long. Using a game timer is the best way to make sure games finish and for both players to get an equal amount of time. Check out the Easy Game Timer from DGT, manufacturers and designers of the timers officially sanctioned by the International Chess Federation. It's simple to set up and customize, and your settings are saved when it's turned off. It's easy to use with a large moving lever for changing turns and a clear digital readout. It's the most affordable and high-quality game timer on the market and is the choice of most 40K events. Whether you want to practice before a big event or you just want to be a better player, the Easy Game Timer from DGT is the perfect game timer for your 40K events. The DGT Easy Game Timer is available from many online retailers. Wholesale pricing is also available for tournament organizers. Check these fine clocks out at dgtnorthamerica.com. Speed up your game and improve your play with the Easy Game Timer from DGT.
We're back. So let's talk about the Genestealer Cult, the lore of Genestealer Cult. And I think this is what makes them really cool, because essentially it starts with a single Genestealer.
Sure does.
So
all it takes is one.
All it takes is one Genestealer, and it's like the orcs. It only takes one little spore of fungus to have an orc invasion. Like it's always one of those.
they've retconned the spores. The spores are no longer a thing.
Oh,
they've taken it out of the lore. So sorry,
Really?
Just my
When did that
action,
happen?
my wagging the finger, straightening the glasses.
Have they taken it out, or they just have kind of not talked about it
They
anymore?
are not talking about it anymore, and I think it's kind of a general like.
You know what?
That's
I think
true.
they leave the orcs ambiguous, huh? They just sort of leave it as like, okay, the fungus thing was a little weird.
They like fighting. Let's not worry about the man behind the curtain. Don't worry about the spores behind the curtain. Okay.
There's more behind the curtain.
So for Genestealer Cult, it does start with the Genestealer.
It does. So Genestealers themselves are considered vanguard organisms of the Tyranids. They're often sent ahead of the main force to like seed planets to like get them ready for consumption.
Yeah.
So if even one Genestealer makes it to a planet, it can start a cult by infecting the host population, slowly growing over centuries sometimes.
Yeah.
Just an organization ready for uprising.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a single Genestealer and it takes a single human, or there actually is I think in one of the Inari books, I can't remember, but there was actually a craft world that had been taken over by Genestealer Cult. It was actually kind of a little interesting twist because the craft world was a little weird. They visited this craft world and they're like, oh, are they chaos? We're not sure yet, but come to find out there's a patriarch at the center of the whole thing. So they literally they can infect, I know that actually would be really cool. They can infect any host, typically humans though. Once they do that, the host that gets infected is fanatically loyal to Genestealer Cult, but their offspring, the first kid they have, is a
horrible abomination.
It's a horrible abomination, but to this person, they think it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's true. They're fully mind controlled by the patriarch to love their offspring.
Yes,
regardless of how many arms they have.
Yeah, and they typically have the first generation has lots of arms.
At least 3.
Yeah, and these are the acolytes, and they are basically they resemble Genestealers more than humans at this point.
They struggle to blend in, but, with enough robes and cloaks over them, they can kind of fit in with the mining populace, which is kind of Genestealer Cult theme.
Yeah, yeah. In a lot of human worlds, there are levels of hives. And so on the deep underground sewers is essentially where a lot of these things live, where they don't have to worry about fitting in with a society kind of thing.
Exactly.
Second generation of these are also Genestealer acolytes, but usually when you get to the third generation, these are neophytes, and these kind of look more like humans. They're sort of crouched, and they may have third arm, but they're still
sometimes
a little bit sort of like
they blend in a little easier.
They can blend in a little easier, like you said, cloaks and robes and things like that. The fourth generation are the neophytes, and this is essentially they look human.
Yeah, they're usually bald and have some forehead ridges going on, but almost entirely human.
Yes.
And then surprise, the fifth generation. That's a pure strain Genestealer for some reason.
Yeah, for some reason, and then all of a sudden a Genestealer comes. That one feels a little weird. That was like, okay. Yeah. So these people that look human have actual Genestealers, and then these Genestealers can go off world and spout more cults, more creeds, things like that. Yeah. The fourth generation though, the neophytes are. They have that hypnotic gaze of Genestealers, and they're charismatic as hell. So these are the ones that might occupy higher levels of government. This is where
the Magus rises up.
The Magus. These are sort of the human-looking things, and this is how they can infiltrate seats of power in a government. But we just went through 4 generations. You can see how long this takes.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why they have the strat plan generations in the making, because it's multiple...
There it is.
Hundreds of years maybe before a planet is sort of infested with Genestealer Cult. So... and then that sort of the hierarchy of Genestealer Cult, you have the Patriarch, who is full-on Genestealer.
Absolutely. Always the first Genestealer to infect a host.
Yes. And he is, he's a combat monster, as we'll find out later.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And he leads, he's a good leader of Genestealers. There's the Magus, and then there's the Primus, and they're the fourth generation that kind of are the leadership figures. And then they have sort of the other hybrids, and Genestealers is kind of the inner circle. They have brood brothers, which could be like members of the Planetary Defense Force.
Right,
that's kind
infiltrated the Guard with that stuff. Yeah,
yeah, and that's why you have Guard that you can kind of bring in. You have different gene sects, so they have like different sections of Genestealer, I guess, cults. Within a population, a large enough planet, you may have multiple different ones that specialize in different things.
Absolutely.
But basically, the Genestealers are there until the Star Children arrive.
Right.
Which is their savior.
They don't really know that they're planning on eating them, of course.
That was not their plan, but they assume that they're serving the will of these star gods, which will come to deliver them.
Absolutely.
In which case, unfortunately, they're Tyranids.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a surprise at the end for them.
I think that's where it gets really creepy.
Yep.
Like, oh, the star gods have arrived. It's been, hundreds and hundreds of years to get to this point, and they show up, and then they just eat them.
Daddy, no.
But I think that's what makes them so creepy and weird, is that they're there to, eventually when they believe the Tyranids are going to show up, they will do the uprising to soften up the defenses, and then when the Tyranids arrive, there's just general pandemonium and panic. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
All according to the Tyranids plan.
All according to Tyranids' plan. What's interesting, though, in a lot of the campaign books, though, is that they will wait. But however, if there's an outside threat, like chaos is invading or something else happens, they have to rise up because they are essentially are protecting their quote unquote planet.
Right, the
It's
resource.
Their resource. So a lot of times you see in the campaign, like in Vigilus and stuff, they didn't really want to rise up. It wasn't their time. The Star Gods aren't there. However, they have to protect what they have already gotten from a chaos invasion or an orc invasion or what have you.
Right.
So,
Whatever may occur, but
Yeah.
it happens.
yeah, so that's that. So those are the Genestealer cults. They were introduced all the way back in first edition with Genestealers.
They are old.
They are old, yeah, and they were, they eventually Genestealers became part of the Tyranid race. And this is in second edition, I think, is when they had the limos.
Right.
Which
Oh, man. Wish we still had those.
yeah, I know they're super cool, and the limos are sort of like, hey, these guys they're part of these higher levels of they're diplomats and they've infiltrated the government or whatever.
Sort of like a mafia-esque.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
gangsters.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and then they make a lot of sense in the game of Necromunda because they're part of that.
Oh, yeah.
But through 4th through 6th edition, they were out, and then 7th is when they reintroduced them. Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah, the Gosar Quintus Broodkin, I think they were called. Yeah.
when they first came out in 7th, they didn't have a lot of models, and 7th
Right.
edition was the classic edition where they would create codexes for I don't know, the Legion of the Damned, which had a single,
Yeah.
they or a Knight Codex with 2 models. They were really kind of stretching a little bit.
Yeah.
Or Inquisition when all the models were like still metal.
Yeah, yeah. So they've gotten a lot better now, and especially with this latest edition and the Tooth and Claw, they've fleshed out the line quite a bit. So, all right,
Like a full army now.
they are a full army. Yeah, and even if they have allies with both Guard and Tyranids, and so you can make them kind of however you want to shape them.
Very
So,
customizable.
yeah. All right, so those are the Genestealer cult. That is the lore. They are just generations of Genestealers with different levels of hybrid monstrosities. Eventually, they are part of a Earth planetary defense force, and they're seats of government, and they essentially are there to do an uprising. Hence the name cult. So
There it is.
there you go. All right, so let's talk about the army rules, and these are sort of part of the flavor of Genestealers.
This is where the eyes start going cross.
A little bit. Yeah. Like the first one's okay. So it's unquestioned loyalty. If a character fails a save, but before damage is rolled or he takes a mortal wound, a friendly unit or brood brother is within 3 inches on a 4-up, they take that and are slain.
Yeah, and it's kind of reminiscent of 7th edition Lookout Sir.
Yeah.
When you could shoot characters, freely.
Yep.
But it kind of gives them an extra level of protection because they, these Maguses and these
And a Primus.
the Primuses,
Yeah.
Even the Patriarch, they're all very fragile.
Yeah.
They're all
Yeah.
support characters.
yeah, and they're
Yeah.
like
Protection.
the Patriarch is like T5, and that's
Yeah.
it's nothing to write home about. The rest of them are like T3.
Oh,
right?
yeah. They're guardsmen.
So
Yeah.
basic snipers, basic scout snipers, or basic like even ratlings, Imperial Guard ratlings, they could delete a character pretty quickly. But this new Lookout Sir for Genestealer Cult really helps protect those characters because this, as we'll talk about, this army functions around characters and psychic powers and auras very heavily.
Yep, for sure.
I like that rule for this army.
They need it.
It's absolutely necessary. Actually, back in 7th, they could auto pass this, which was just insane. So
Yeah.
I'm glad it's been toned down a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so then there's that. But it's only on a 4-up, so it's half the time. So it's still not, but it gives them a layer of protection. There's ways to get higher, but those are different units we'll talk about. The next we have Cult Ambush, and this is where things get different. Because unquestioned loyalty, you're like, okay, they're like drones. Yeah, that's easy enough. Cult Ambush is essentially deployment shenanigans. And when you play against a Genestealer Cult player, you are deploying and moving against little markers, little cult markers. So basically, Genestealer Cult still has to abide by the restrictions on only half your army can go in reserves. But essentially, if they have the Cult Ambush rule, you can do either one of two things. You can either go underground, which means they're essentially off the board and they're deep striking 9 inches away from model. Deep strike is an old term, but you know what I mean. They're placed 9 inches away, second turn on, so they can't come in the first turn.
Yeah.
Or you put them in ambush, And with ambush is you basically take, for every unit that you decide to put in ambush, which has to be at least half, you have a little ambush marker. And the little marker is just it's like a little, 2-inch objective or something like that?
Yeah, I think the movie Aliens, where
Yeah.
they've got the motion trackers, that sort of thing.
The little blips, yeah. So you place the markers down, and essentially you place them, but you have to put them in your deployment zone. Now, what's cool about these markers is your opponent can't come within 9 inches of that marker. And when you, that's really it. It can't come within 9 inches of the marker. That's actually really important because essentially the marker just sits there. Now, if it's first turn, and you're given first turn as a Genestealer Cult player, which, by the way, you don't really want.
You don't
Right,
want
you
to
wanna
do
go
that.
second.
You don't. You reveal them by selecting a model and setting it within 1 inches of that marker, and the rest of the unit within. You take a single model from that unit, put it within 1 inches. The rest of the unit is within 6 inches, but you still have to be within your zone,
Right.
and 9 inches away from enemy models.
Imagine deploying your entire army across the way from a Genestealer Cult player. You have your entire army out. You know, you have all your Terminators out, and you have your scouts out and everything. The only thing that your opponent has deployed are these little red markers.
Yeah.
These like a dozen or more little red markers, and you have no idea what each one of those little red markers are.
Yeah.
Your opponent does. I
Yeah.
mean, he might. I mean,
He's got a plan.
Yeah, he knows
would hope.
what's going to go where, but you have no idea what you're setting up close to, and he with stratagems he can add fake markers. He can move markers around with characters as he's probably going to go into, but it is definitely a different way of playing the game, and I applaud GW for putting enough the brain power into this to create such a unique army.
You imagine they had to go through a lot of playtesting because the rules for this are like a page long of text
Oh, yeah.
because they had to really get it down right. And even then they had to, there's FAQs to sort of clarify some of the ruling. And in fact, in the latest Psychic Awakening, they rewrote the rules in the most up-to-date format. But you're right. You put the markers down. What's key here, though, is that you don't have to, it's not so much that the markers are one-to-one with whatever unit. The markers can be any of the units you have. So let's say you have 10 units and you have 10 markers on the board. You can put those units whichever marker you want. You don't have to,
combination,
it doesn't have to, it's not something like it's a hidden thing like, oh, this marker is the rock grinder. I have to, that marker is just a marker. So you have, first turn, you have perfect information about where to place your stuff and deploy, which you need to with Genestealer Cult because it's so fragile. Yeah. So,
You basically get 2 deployment phases with Genestealer Cults.
yeah. If you go second, which is kind of what you want, the opponent at the end of their movement phase, then you can reveal the markers, and they can't come within 9. So regardless of what happens, they cannot be within a certain range. Then you can reveal the markers. Yeah. So that is Cult Ambush.
Yeah, well, and just the amount of power from that of your opponent can move a lot of units towards like a marker. Like I'm going to attack that marker, and then you could say, "Surprise! It's empty. There's nothing there."
Yeah.
It's very easy to do a denied flank with this deployment.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that they can put infantry in these things. They can put bikes in these things. They can put transports in these things.
Every single model in the Genestealer Cult Codex has this rule.
Yeah. Now there's a couple strats. There's a lot of strats, but there's a couple strats that really affect this. One is they came from below for 1 CP. You can move 3 models underground and remove up to 3 markers. So let's say that you obviously still abiding by. Do you still abide by the?
No.
Nope.
This gets around it.
They FAQ'd that.
Oh, comma.
Yeah.
I see. So what this essentially is, you move 3 models and put them underground and remove 3 markers. So let's say you have, there's 3 of those markers, and you go, I need to put 3 of these things underground. That actually gets around the restriction.
It does.
Brutal.
It started the game on the table.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. But essentially, what you do is you remove them, and then they'll come. They'll be able to quote unquote deep strike next turn.
Right.
So, you meticulous uprising. You can move up to 3 markers up to 12 inches. So
Pretty handy.
essentially, you're like, I want to move these back up to 3 of them back. And then the best one is for one. And these are all 1 CP. 1 CP, you can put 4 markers for a unit instead of 1. I love that. So essentially, you have 4 markers of nothing. So, Evan, tell me about kind of how are you thinking about when you're using these, when you're deploying here?
So the main thing is you're trying to mess with your opponent's mind in a way. Like, they're not sure where any of your stuff is going to be. They have a general idea where things could be. But, I mean, even if they start to gotten onto what you're doing, you can change what you're doing with those stratagems.
Yeah, it's changing mid-fly is kind of the thing that makes it like really, like, so you have certain units and they like, okay, I'm going to go over here. Like you said, deny flank, you could literally just take up a whole half of the board and go, I'm going to be over here.
Right.
So,
And there's a character that moves a token, right?
Yeah, the Nexos.
The Nexos moves a...
He's also the command point refund guy, but
yeah.
The one that has the map of the Warhammer world.
Yep.
On his model.
Yeah.
Little holo table.
Yeah. And he's useful because you can't deep strike within 12 inches of him, right? So he's...
That's the Klamavis.
Oh, the
the
Klamavis.
Klamavis.
Okay, got it.
You know, they don't have a billion characters or anything like
Yeah,
that.
that's true. They got a lot.
They have a billion characters.
They do.
So with this, essentially, I think you always spend a CP to get the 4 markers. So you have 4 additional markers.
I honestly don't use that one super often. I use the one to send them back into deep strike.
Yeah.
Almost every game.
Interesting. Yeah. And because it gets around it. So that means you have that much more off the board.
Oh, yeah.
And, usually, especially now with the latest ITC missions where you sort of know if you're going second, you always want to go second. You can roll 2d6 and pick one to go for your deployment zone or however they're going to eventually land it. But the point is you get to roll at least and have some agency in what kind of deployment zone you're going to have. You can really get really, really good with this stuff here.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's what makes Genestealer Cults super cool is that it's all in the deployment. And if you like deployment and you like kind of the tricksiness of it, this is the sort of the army for you.
Mind games.
For sure, yeah.
And if you like cool models, Genestealer Cult is also for you. Those rock grinder trucks are awesome.
Super cool.
So cool.
The bikes are super cool. Their characters are really flavorful. And
Yeah. So there's other strats that are actually other kind of the deployment and tricks. And one is a perfect ambush. So you remember you have all those units that are underground that are going to come down turn 2, 9 inches away. But for 3 CP, after you set up an infantry or biker model, which by the way, most Genestealer Cult, I mean, they're vehicles, but a lot of the good stuff, they have infantry that all have different types. Some of them are more shooting, some of them are more melee, but they're good. You can move D6 or shoot with its ranged weapons. So perfect ambush is really, really nice because essentially you come down for 3 CP and you can shoot and you can still charge and shoot. So if you come down with like, I don't know, hand flamers, for example, or something like that, you could shoot them right away and you're shooting sort of outside of phase. And anytime you get an outside of phase action, it's super useful.
Specifically for the hand flamers, they are 6 inches.
Yeah.
So you would have to combo this with another stratagem that we're about to talk about as well.
Yeah. So the lying in wait is 2 CP. You set up for cult ambush 3 inches away and you can't charge. So actually, that's a good point. So you spend 2 CP, you can go 3 inches away from the enemy, which by the way is super useful. There's very few things in the game that get around that 9-inch thing.
Absolutely.
And then you can shoot. And then you can shoot again in your shooting phase, essentially. Shoot twice.
That's a total of 5 CP, so it's a little spendy.
Yeah. But, if you want to clear some space,
Yeah,
you clear some space.
and there's ways of getting like +1 to wound on those hand flamers that can just, and they're only strength 3, the hand flamers, but
I
still.
mean, they're D6 auto hits.
Yeah.
It's going to be 20 acolytes doing it. So.
It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, if you're spending that much CP for this, you're going to get maximum hand flamers in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean, even beside that, lying in wait, 3 inches from away and you can't charge, there's still neophytes with different types of things. I mean, you don't really need to be 3 inches away, though. That usually, I think it's just for the shooting. It makes a lot of sense.
Most people use that for the hand flamers, but I can see some use with the neophyte shotguns.
The
'cause
shotguns.
They get the extra strength when they're closer.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. But perfect ambush is kind of their trick in that you can move D6 and still charge and shoot. And so essentially, you have a 9-inch charge, but if you move, then you reduce that by however, what your dice roll is. And of course, you can always CP reroll that if you need to. But yeah, it's super useful.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
I mean, as we're talking about this, I hope everybody can kind of see that hasn't played Genestealer Cult, has had the anxiety of playing Genestealer Cult.
There's a level of anxiety when
There
you're
is
playing against these
an
guys.
intense level of anxiety, and there's a couple characters we'll go over later that just like take that anxiety to a 12.
Yeah.
You'll see that yes, they're all mostly toughness 3, and they are the definition of a glass cannon or a glass hammer, but they have so many tricks and rules to help get really, really close, just out of nowhere to where they can deliver that hurt, without getting shot off the table.
Yeah, and that's a good point. A lot of their units are quite weak.
Yes.
Toughness wise, they hit
cannot
hard.
take a hit.
They can't take hits, but with all of these deployment shenanigans and all these movement things, you are essentially removing them from actually even getting targeted. So if they're not there, you can't target them. It's the ultimate defense.
They need these tricks, honestly.
They do.
Like, if they didn't have them, this would not be an army we would talk about.
Yeah,
They
for sure.
need to make these charges.
Yeah, yeah. Finally, return to shadows for 1 CP at the end of the movement phase. This is useful as well. Infantry biker with cult ambush more than 3 inches away from an enemy. You can, that did not arrive, you can, if it didn't arrive that turn, you can remove it and then try it again next turn. Now, does this get around the everything has to be on the board by turn 3?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you can actually take things off. Like turn 3, you can remove something and you can bring it back at whatever point you want to bring it back on.
You have to bring it back the next turn.
The next turn, got it. Yeah. So turn 4. So it gets post that. So between the 3 strats, perfect ambush, return to shadows, and lying in wait, those are ways to manipulate the ambush part of cult ambush, or sorry, the underground part
Right,
of
the
cult
deep strike,
ambush, the deep strike
essentially,
piece. The ambush part of it was they came from below meticulous uprising and scanner decoys. So they have 6 strats to sort of change how they deploy and how they deploy really.
How they show up.
How they show up. What makes this? You talked about we need this. This army needs it, otherwise it wouldn't work. So go into a little more.
Well, like you said, they're majority toughness 3. So if you look at them sideways, they're going to die.
Yep.
So if they need these tricks to be able to make combat, because that's where they want to be,
Yeah.
they need to get in, kill stuff, and hopefully not get any retaliation.
Yeah. Yeah. So you need to know kind of your wrap and trap, and you need to be able to do a lot of precise movement. So, and I think it's good because essentially when you put your models on the table with Genestealer Cult, you have, like I said, almost perfect information about what your opponent has. He always has to make the first move, and then you can react to that. So it's a great reactive army for that reason. So,
Absolutely.
I couldn't play it. I'll tell you right now.
I can barely play it, to be honest.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's been tempting for me to pick up Genestealer Cult, especially because you have Imperial Guard you can ally with, you have Tyranids you can ally with, so you can have some fun stuff going on there. But it's a horde army. It's
a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. And so when you have these units that can do these things, you want to make them count. So Genestealer Cult really isn't a MSU army. It's like big blocks of things. I mean, and with characters essentially.
You usually have large blocks of infantry that are doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah. Yeah, which is good, and it's kind of how you want to. That's how they roll. But we talked about hand flamers as one. There's also mining lasers that don't require to have to get too crazy, but all of their weapons are short ranged, almost all of them.
Part, yeah.
So you have to get up close. There's also the rock saw, kind of the more melee variant of their infantry, and then of course we have aberrants, which are just gross, really, really tough. So they have a lot of different, like between a nice mix of melee and shooting. And so if you think of like how you want to manipulate these things to get their shots off, to get their bonuses, to get the melee, to get into combat, you could see kind of which one makes sense given the unit that you're using.
And by themselves, none of these are really, none of them will jump out at you on paper.
Yep.
But when we start going over some of these psychic powers and some of these buff from these characters, you'll see that they're like, whoa. Type thing.
Basic troops can get insane with the right buffs.
Well, and that's the thing about them is you look at the data slates and you're like, okay, they're cool, but they're not that amazing. But then you start stacking the buffs, and that is how we'll talk about this in the next episode. But an aberrant can wound a knight on a 2. So there's ways to get into that, and you're just like, what?
Acolytes can do it too.
Yeah, wounding. They can wound on 2 re-rolling ones,
which is like what?
And they can fight before they die.
Yeah, there's a lot. We'll get to that next episode, but before we do that, let's talk a little bit about we talked about that they can ally with Guard. You can have what's called Brood Brothers detachment, which is an Astra Militarum detachment. You can't use named characters. You replace the regiment keyword with Brood Brothers. You increase your leadership by 1. That's kind of their shtick. You get unquestioned loyalty. So leadership by 1 and questioned loyalty are the regiment traits, I guess, that kind of fit. But you can't use regiment-specific stratagems or orders. But, okay.
That would be chaos.
It would be a mess.
That would be
and the CP benefits are halved for this detachment. That one's kind of a little bit, but...
Yeah.
So what I've seen a lot of people do with the Brood Brothers detachment is a Supreme Command detachment of 3 tank commanders.
Tank commander.
Yeah.
You're only getting 1 command point from that anyway.
Yeah, and it's going to be a single command point. Yeah, so if you take a specialist detachment with a single CP, and tank commanders are just good no matter what.
Yeah, I mean they have good shooting, and that's one thing that Genestealer Cult were missing for a while. I mean, they have mining lasers and they have ridge runners and things like that, but
they're short ranged.
They don't have a lot to clear chaff, which they do struggle with.
Well, flamers, but that's a single thing, right? And it's sort of
That's a one and done, and that unit's probably going to die.
It's dead next turn. Yes, it's true. Yeah, but yeah, that's really you see that, but I guess it just depends on it. I think there's ways the 3 tank commanders is always good.
Oh yeah.
But I think at that point, then your Genestealer Cult army becomes kind of a melee focused because you kind of have your shooting. 3 tank commanders is enough to take care of most of your
3
shooting.
Punisher cannons.
Yeah.
That's going to take any chaff you see.
Yeah, sort of it's done. And then you say, okay, I'm going to focus on melee. But obviously you only really want to take an astro military detachment if it's going to fit a role that you don't have.
Absolutely.
And they don't get to do cult ambush. So they start on the board no matter what. You can also take an Tyranid detachment, which is not bad.
That's what I do.
Yeah, so what does your Tyranid detachment typically look like?
So...
Don't say Kraken Genestealers. Don't say Kraken
No,
Genestealers.
absolutely. Kraken Genestealers.
Yeah.
You get those
Swarm
guys
Lord.
turn 1 combat,
Yeah.
so the enemy's distracted.
Yeah.
And then you've got these deep striking acolytes
Got
that
it.
are just... There's very few people... Well, not few, but it's tough to react to that.
Yeah, the Kraken Genestealer chunk, which is what the 2 units of big fat Genestealers
2 units of 20 and Swarm Lord.
and Swarm Lord, and then. But do you take anything else? Is that it? Well, that's a
for
battalion,
that-
right?
Yeah, that's the skeleton of it.
Yeah.
The rest is really up to you.
Yeah.
You can get some shooting in there with some Carnifexes.
You use some rippers or whatever, do whatever. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, Hive Guard are still really good too.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's a lot of interesting. Actually, Hive Guard kind of do fill a lot of the holes in a Genestealer Cult list because it has long range shooting and yeah. There we go.
Out of line of sight shooting.
Out of line of sight, which they don't have.
High strength.
Yeah. I would think a Hive Guard would be probably interesting, but I guess it depends on kind of what you're going for. So you're saying you use the Kraken Genestealers to do the melee piece, and then you'll use the Acolyte Hybrids for a lot of the close range shooting.
Yes, I use the Flamer guys in there as well, but I like... Because Kraken Genestealers struggle with things that are toughness 8 or high toughness. You get a giant block of Acolytes in there with some Rock Saws and the Vigilus stuff.
Oh, yeah.
They can easily take out anything Knight equivalent.
Yeah. Cool.
Knights melt to rock saws.
Well, and it just, there's no way you can't, unless a Knight is running with the screen, and most Knights don't run with screens. I mean, what are you screening with?
That's the Genestealers for.
Yeah. so it's weird. It's weird. If you're a full Knight army, Genestealer Cult will just pick you up. I don't know. There's a way to round it unless you have a detachment of Guard or Astra Militarum that you can sort of screen out. But even then, the screens don't last long, and then they're sort of done. So, yeah. All right, let's talk about the cult creeds. These are all, first of all, they're super cool named. There are 6 of them. And these are, brand new, just like everything else, like craft worlds or chapters and stuff like that. So we'll go through the cult creeds, and we will talk about sort of their rules, their traits, their relics, and the strats that are associated with it. So the first is the Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. And this is hailing from the Trist mining dynasty of Gosar Quintus. The Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor lies in wait beneath the planet's crust before launching a long-planned and decisive ambush. Some of their number never see the light until the day of insurrection, where the moment comes. These troglodytes attack with speed and savagery. Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. These are subterranean ambushers. Until the end of the first battle round, I had 1 to advance in charge made for units with the Cult Creed. So it's right away, that's actually pretty useful. Yeah. Starting from the second battle round, if a unit with this Cult Creed is set up on the battlefield, then until the end of the turn, add 1 of the advance in charge rolls made for this unit. So what's the difference between the first and second turn? That's always kind of weird.
So that first part was if they start on the board, if they emerge from the blips.
Got it.
Second is if they deep strike, they get the +1.
Got it. So they have a +1 advance in charge.
For the first turn that they show up on the board.
Oh, the first turn they show up on the board. Okay.
which is amazing.
Because I had to read that a couple times. Like, what the heck? Oh, I get it. So whether they arrive from ambush or whether they arrive from the markers, first +1 advance in charge.
Remembering that a good chunk of this army strategy is to arrive out of nowhere and get into combat
Show
immediately
up, wreck
after.
stuff, try not to die.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, what's a Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor stratagem?
It's the stratagem.
The stratagem.
It's a plan generations in the making. Vect, also known as Vect. Use a stratagem just after your opponent has spent command points to use a stratagem, but before the effects of the stratagem are resolved, roll a d6 on a 1. Your opponent's stratagem is resolved as normal. On a 2 to 5, your opponent's command points are refunded, but the stratagem they were using is not resolved and cannot be attempted again this phase. On a 6, the stratagem they were attempting to use is not resolved, cannot be attempted again this phase, and the command points spent are lost. This stratagem cannot be used if there are no Cult of Four-Armed Emperor units on the battlefield and cannot be used to affect stratagems used before the battle or during deployment. It is also only able to be used once per game.
But you
But it's 3 command points rather than 4.
Yes.
Yep. It's 3 CP. You shut something down.
I like this one actually better than the Dark Eldar Vect one, because the Dark Eldar Vect one is 4 command points. You can use it as much,
Yeah.
but
at that point, you use it twice.
Yeah.
You don't have enough CP to use it.
If
So,
that,
yeah. So, what do you typically... This is why you see a lot of people, even if they don't use a detachment of Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor, they'll have a mixed detachment with a single character who's a Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. Just have access, because this is one of the most important strats. So, what are you shutting down with this?
So usually I'll use that if somebody's doing something that'll mess with my deployment, because I need my deployment to go how I need it.
Yeah, for sure. And then Chaos has a lot of things. Like a lot of Chaos armies are dependent on a strat or 2, and these tend to mess with that quite a bit.
or you can use it for things that are going to counter our I show up from nowhere and attack you. So, Evan, last time we played, I tried to intercept your aberrants with a unit of scatter laser bikes, and you said
Not
nope.
today.
And inside I was like, fiddlesticks. I was really hoping he wasn't going to do that, because that really puts me in a dilly of a pickle.
That really salts my melon.
Yeah, well, and also like Auspex scan and anything that intercepts it makes sense. If it's one thing to intercept a cheapy unit, but if it's something important, that's kind of actually you need it. Like you said, if it interferes with your deployment and your ability to do the things you want to do, then you got to shut that down.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so that is the Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. What is their...
Their warlord trait is the warlords on the battlefield. You can reroll 1 hit roll, wound roll, and saving throw made for a friendly cult unit. In addition, if your army's Battleforge, roll a d3 and you get that many command points.
That's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
Definitely not bad.
No.
Because this army needs command points. It goes through them so quickly.
Yeah. Well, we just talked about 5 of them just to get hand flamers to do some damage. That's a lot just for hand flamers. And you can start rolling really poorly.
The relic is a
Bone sword.
Is a bone sword that's
It's not bad.
makes 4 additional attacks with it.
Not bad.
Four-armed Emperor. A relic gives you 4 additional attacks.
The
Okay.
description of it is a little wacky. Like the sword itself splits into 4 different blades.
Sure, because why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. The Pauper Princes, the devoted zealots. The cultists of the Pauper Princes are so zealous, because they're devoted. That last part was not actually written here. They would gladly hurl themselves on an active frag grenade to protect their cult leaders. When their organization is threatened, they fight like madmen to pull down and slaughter those who threaten their ascendants. So these are the zealot types. You can reroll hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by a unit with the cult creed in a turn in which they made a charge, move, were charged, or performed a heroic intervention. So actually reroll attacks for melee weapons is actually pretty good.
It's not bad, but the reason I think we don't see this one too often is Genestealer Cult doesn't really struggle in killing things.
Yeah, they've
once
got
they
plenty
get
of attacks.
There.
Yeah.
What they need are ways to get there.
This would make sense if they had smaller units that needed to really hit hard, but they have larger units and they usually they overkill a lot. Their melee overkills a lot. Like it's rare that they leave something with a couple wounds left. It's gone. It's usually just gone.
Whatever they hit, they usually destroy.
Yeah, so they don't really need to reroll the hits because they got plenty of them usually. So.
Including knights. Like a
Yeah.
unit of like 20 infantry. Like, this knight is dead with 10 rock sauce.
Yeah, that's so gross. Their strat is Vengeance for the Martyred. It's 1 CP. When an enemy destroys a Pauper Prince's character, for the remainder of the battle, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Pauper Prince models. So again, it's a hit change, which is
it's nice, but like if you're losing characters, something's wrong.
exactly. Yeah, something is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is okay. The warlord trait is beloved grandsire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, add 2 to unquestioning loyalty roll. So that's the lookout, sir. For the
That
warlord.
was pretty good. So then you get 2 up. Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah,
That was the best one we've seen. I think.
Yep, definitely.
And the relic.
the reliquary of Saint Tanarch. Oh man, it's friendly. Pauper Prince units automatically pass morale tests while they are within 6 inches of the bear. In addition, roll d6 each time a friendly Pauper Prince infantry or biker model is destroyed while it's within 6 inches of the bearer. And on a 4+, they basically get to shoot or make a single attack with their melee weapon. It's not bad. Not bad.
No.
It's like the banner for Space Marines.
No, got it. Yeah, the shoot back thing. Except they don't need to last long enough. I actually think their warlord trait's nice though. That's pretty good. But there's other ways to kind of keep characters alive, but it's not bad. So I get why the Pauper Princes, their bonuses to hits are not super useful half the time. But the Hive Cult, disciplined militants. The brothers and sisters of the Hive Cult are no strangers to war. They fight in tight-knit military units, whether they hail from Hive ganger cultures or the military organizations of the Imperium. Each is well drilled in the use of the sidearms as well as repurposed industrial tools, and in battle they fight with an uncanny discipline that sees them triumph against the odds. I've never seen a Hive Cult I've never actually seen this.
Yeah, you're not going to see them too often.
Let's read the rules. So if a unit with this cult creed fails a morale test, see right away, have the number of models that flee. In addition, units with this cult creed can still shoot in a turn in which they fall back, but they do so, they must subtract 1. So it feels kind of cool, but they're not going to survive contact usually.
Yeah, those aren't really bad like traits.
Yep.
But I mean, when you're generally toughness 3 and you're taking wounds, morale isn't necessarily what you're worried about.
Usually you're
Besides,
dead.
that's what patriarchs are for.
Yeah,
I was going to
that's
say,
true.
They keep you fearless.
patriarchs are everywhere, and patriarchs, let you auto pass. So I could see why.
Yeah.
The stratagem, use chilling efficiency. Use the stratagem after a Hive Cult unit from your army has attacked an enemy unit in the shooting phase, and the attack resulted in the enemy unit losing 1 or more wounds. Add 1 to the hit rolls for the attacks made by other friendly Hive Cult units that target that same enemy unit this phase. It's okay. I mean, I'd prefer like the more Tau type one that the Tau Sept gets.
+1 to wound.
Where your entire army gets +1 to wound that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a better one.
Yeah, Hive Cult is more geared towards shooting.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, Genestealer Cult have some good guns, don't get me wrong, but they're more of a melee army.
They're short range and they sort of come up and it makes sense.
And hand flamers don't care about pluses to hit.
Exactly.
Yeah, and hand flamers don't care.
Now, if it was a +1 to wound, I'd be all over it.
Ooh, brother.
Yeah, that would be that's the good stuff there. What's their warlord trait?
Their warlord trait is we're on the Hive Cult. Reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made with ranged weapons by models and friendly Hive Cult units while they're within 6 inches of your warlord. Again, it's more of a shooting type thing. I mean, the bikes have some guns on them, don't they?
Yeah.
They've got the same guns as neophytes, so
You
auto
can take
guns,
mining
laser
lasers.
guns, shotguns. The Wolf Quad, which is a great name,
Yeah.
their 4-wheeler can take a mining laser or a heavy flamer.
Got it. So actually, if you're running a bunch of bikes, that makes sense because, like I said, they're shooting army, and they can still fall back and then shoot at -1.
Yeah, I could see that.
But if you're running bikes, there's another cult creed that's going to serve you better.
Yep, there is.
Yep.
That is almost specifically made for bikes, it seems like. Hive Cult,
Which would actually... Yeah.
Vakor's Talisman is the relic. Hive Cult models only. You can reroll hit rolls for attacks made with the bearer's melee weapon when targeting enemy characters. In addition, each time you roll a wound roll of 6 for an attack with one of the bearer's melee weapons, this attack inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target to any normal damage unless it's targeting a vehicle or Titanic. Yeah, it doesn't really fit with a shooting type cult
weird.
and a melee talisman.
Sometimes the collections of things are kind of interesting here. So
Unless you're 4-armed emperor, then everything's good.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Okay. So the bladed cog, cyborgized hybrids.
Now, these guys are pretty cool. You'll
Yeah.
see these a little bit more commonly than, say, Pauper Princes or Hive Cult.
Yeah, the Genestealer Cult has taken hold in the Forge Worlds of the Imperium. Numbers a great many cyborgs among its flock. They seek to make man, machine, and alien one single all-conquering organism. They are the Borg, I guess. And in doing so, they find a supernatural resilience that makes them strong and hardy combatants. So all models get a 6-up invul save,
Not bad.
which is pretty good when you're talking about a army that has a ton of models. So that's itself is not bad. Models of the Cult Creed already have an invul save. Actually, have their invul save increased by 1 to a maximum of 3.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, so an increased invul on some of these, like what are like Patriarch, right? Would be
So I really wish that Cold Creeds affected Patriarchs.
Oh, they don't?
Yeah, because he's a Gene Stealer.
Oh, got it. Oh, that's too bad. But anyways, other things. So
Moving on.
in addition, infantry models do not suffer the penalty for their hit rolls for moving and shooting heavy weapons.
Not bad.
So actually, Acolyte hybrids work really well in a bladed cog because they can move, they can shoot mining lasers, they can do their things.
Neophytes with the mining lasers, yeah.
The neophytes, yeah, for sure. So bladed cog, that's nice.
Okay, the stratagem is overthrow the oppressors. Use the stratagem before bladed cog unit from your army, not Gene Stealers. They really kind of separated out those Gene Stealers in here.
Yeah.
Army is selected to fight in the fight phase until the end of the phase. Each time you roll an unmodified hit roll is 6 with an attack made by a model, and that unit, that model can immediately make an additional hit roll against the same target using the same weapon. These bonus attacks cannot themselves generate more. These extra attacks are instead generated on unmodified hit rolls of 5s or 6s when targeting Imperium units, such as Knights.
Yep.
Or unmodified rolls of 4, 5, 6 if targeting Adeptus Mechanicus. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah.
Interesting. So
This is a really good stratagem.
Yeah.
for 1 CP.
Yeah, there are a lot of 1 CP strats too that are really good. So bladed cog, yeah, I could totally see that. Yep.
And the Warlord trait is after deployment, but before the first battle round, select 1 unit from your opponent's army that you can reroll wound rolls for attacks made by all friendly bladed cog units while they're within 6 inches of your Warlord were targeting the selected unit.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
There are worse ones out there.
Yep.
The relic is the Mark of the Clawed Omnissiah. The bearer has a 4-up invul save. In addition, each time the model finishes a charge move, select 1 enemy unit within 1 inch. And on a roll a d6 on a 2-up, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
A single mortal wound is really nothing to write home about.
Yeah, well, they always have those little, and in addition, on a such and such, a mortal wound is done. Whoopee. That's amazing.
At least it's not a sniper pistol, because we know how much GW loves their sniper pistols.
Hey, we're going to talk about some soon, actually.
Yeah.
Are we?
Yeah.
I imagine.
We'll get there. Yeah. Rusted Claw is what you were talking about. Nomadic survivalists.
Here's the vroom vroom. Here's
The
where
vroom
the bikes,
vroom,
the bikes come in.
Rusted Claw believe that all things will rust and fade away in time, and that they need but endure to outlast the inequities of the galaxy. They are toughened in body as well as philosophy, and they take no real care over their material possessions and are hence often clad in a motley of rags and tattered leather. The skin and chitin beneath is as hard as oak. So the stuff they have, but they're survivalists. So they're out there in the kind of the wastelands.
Think Mad Max, but with Xenos.
Yeah, and a Mad Max themed army with Genestealer Cult. Right away, that's really cool. I don't think I've seen one, but
Shiny and chrome.
that would be cool. Oh, yeah, even better. When making saving throws, excluding invulnerable saves, for a model with this Cult Creed, add 1 in the result if the weapon being used has an armor penetration of 0 or -1.
Which is really not bad.
Good against a lot of the Marine lists, which have a lot of minuses floating around with their bolters, which bolters will tear through stuff. In addition, biker models do not suffer the penalty for the hit rolls for moving and shooting heavy weapons and or for advancing and shooting assault weapons.
Oh, yeah.
So this is where the bikes get into. They don't suffer the penalties to move. And almost if you're going to run a lot of bikes, you run them as Rusted Claw. There's just no other way around it. Yeah. So,
And their stratagem, keep in mind the title, because I think GW knew exactly what people are going to use this one for. It's called Drive-By Demolitions.
nice. Love that.
Use the stratagem before the Rusted Claw biker unit from your army shoots in your shooting phase. Until the end of the phase, add 1 to hit and wound rolls made for attacks with that unit's grenade weapons. After this unit has resolved all of its shooting attacks this phase, it can immediately make a move as if it were the movement phase, but cannot charge this turn. So keep in mind those bikes move really far, and they auto advance 6. Do they auto advance?
I don't think they do.
No.
Yeah, and you can also advance with this.
Yeah.
As if it was your movement phase, so you're moving a good chunk.
And you're chucking demolitions.
And there's another CP in here. Well, sure, we'll get into the next episode where
It's
you
a generic stratagem.
Yeah, we'll just go ahead.
You
What is it?
combo
you can use more. You can have demo charges on like 5 of the bikes, I think,
Up to 5. Oh, yeah, 10 grenades or 5 demo charges.
and 5 demo
Usually
charges.
you'd be able to have one guy
Yeah.
toss them
Yeah,
something.
but you can throw 5 demo charges. You can pop in. You can pop in, get close enough to throw the demo charges. You throw 5 demo charges that are +1 to hit and wound, which would probably be
They're
wound.
strength 8.
Yep.
Yeah, so they'd be wounding knights on 3s.
Yep.
And they're D6 damage.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And then as soon as you throw them, time to get out of dodge. All for 1 command point.
Yeah, well,
It
and
is amazing.
The 2, if you do, it's called extra explosives, and that's where you can do up to 5 demo charges or 10 grenades.
And if you, I mean,
But still, that's such a deal for all that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you'd have to pay more command points to get close enough to throw them, like popping out of nowhere. But if you're coming from like behind a wall or something, yeah, for sure. It's very good.
Yep. And what's the stats on the demo charge, just for completion's sake?
It's good. They're good. That's why they restrained them to 5 per unit.
Because if they just set all of them, yeah.
Knights do not exist anymore.
Yeah, demolition charge, sorry, 6 inches. Grenade D6.
Oh, it is D6.
So typically you can only do 1. D6.
So 5d6.
Yeah, strength 8, -3, D3. And you can only use it once per battle. So normally I think you can have, 2 demo charges per 5. So
For the bikes, you can take a unit of 5 and each of them can
the bikes can have them.
They can only use them once per battle, but
But-
if that's your shtick, if that's like, I want this thing dead, I want this flyer dead, I want this knight dead.
Yeah, but it hits hard. That's
It's
the
a
thing.
scalpel tool.
Yeah, in fact, actually, a lot of
coming
these
at
are
a terminal
scalpel
velocity.
tools. They just do these things. I think that plays to the nature of this army. It's fragile.
The bikes are a little bit more durable. They've got -1 to hit, and they're toughness 4 with 2 wounds.
Yep.
At 10 points a model.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Those bikes are only 10 points a model, and they're negative.
Before upgrades.
Oh, okay.
Because you buy the weapons
With
for
a
'em.
native -1 to hit.
That's good for 10 points.
Yeah.
And if they're Rusted Claw, they get that additional durability
Ignoring
boost.
-1 AP, which is good. That makes them that's quite durable. Because there's just so much -1 AP in the game right now. So, all right, what's their warlord trait?
Warlord trait, the Entropic Touch. Each time you roll an unmodified ruin roll of 6 in the fight phase for a model with the friendly Rusted Cog unit, while they're within 6 inches of the Warlord, the armor penetration characteristic of the attack is improved by 1.
Yep.
Cool.
It's not bad.
It's like okay.
We can't be given things with both hands, right? We have an awesome stratagem, an awesome cult rule. I mean,
We take this creed for the bikes and what they can do.
Yep, pretty much.
We can't all be Blackheart, Dark Eldar, right? That have the best
Of everything.
the best relic, the best stratagem,
Best
and the
trait.
and the best cabal trait. We can't all be Blackheart, right? Rusted Claw relic is for the Magus only. It's a stave that replaces their force stave, which is
The metallophagic stave.
the metallophagic stave. It's neg 5 AP, which you don't see.
Okay, if the Magus gets in combats for some reason.
Yep,
which happens more often than you'd think.
Well, that's the character. It makes sense.
it's D3 damage +2 to a strength of 3, I'd imagine. So it's strength 5, neg 5, D3, not bad. Each time you roll a wound roll of 4 up for this attack made with this weapon that targets a vehicle, the target unit suffers 1 mortal wound in addition to any normal damage.
That's surprisingly kind of gross.
It's like
actually.
haywire a little bit.
Yeah. And on a wound roll of 6+, it suffers D3 mortal wounds.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So if he gets stuck in a tight place against, say, a dreadnought, he might do some damage.
It might do something. Yeah. All right, then we have the Twisted Helix, which you see probably the most. And it's actually the most straightforward. The Twisted Helix excels in the arts of insane alchemy and dark experimentation. Its neatly attired biophagous progenitors create monstrous hybrids of all sizes and shapes, the energies of forbidden biochemical concoctions boiling through their veins to lend uncanny strength and speed. So, add 1 to the strength characteristic of models with the Cult Creed. In addition, add 2 to advanced rolls for this unit with the Cult Creed.
And that's always, not just when they come in, like Forearmed Emperor.
Like if they had just said add 1 to the strength, it probably would have been fine. But adding 2 to advanced rolls is just making it even more. It's good. It's really, really good.
Combos really nicely with the Psychic Stimulus hour,
Yes.
which we'll talk about.
Yep.
So aberrants are they strength 4 or are they strength 5?
They're strength 5.
They're strength
Toughness
5.
4.
So this makes them strength 6.
Makes them strength 6. So this is the first part on the road to wounding knights on 2s. So Twisted Helix is the first collect. So if you're running aberrants, or any real melee combat.
You-
Makes sense.
Acolytes really like this one too.
Acolytes as well, yeah, because of rock sauce.
Yeah, and their stratagem is geared towards aberrants because it's 3 CP, which is standard for what I'm about to say. It's called Monstrous Bio Horrors. Use a stratagem at the end of the fight phase. Select a Twisted Helix aberrant unit from your army. That unit can immediately fight again. In addition, why they added this, I will never know.
Yep.
In addition, until the end of the turn, subtract 1 from the leadership characteristics of enemy units while they're within 6 inches of that unit.
Just because.
Yeah,
because
that's one of those things you're going to forget.
Oh, yeah.
You'll
Why not?
always forget that. Yeah,
They'll be dead. I mean,
we'll be dead. Yeah,
whatever they will hit,
Yeah.
they will destroy.
Yeah.
Especially if those aberrants are fighting twice.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think there's a thing in the game that can stand up to even like a fully buffed aberrant.
no.
Anyways,
I don't think so.
fighting twice.
No way.
Anyways,
high invul saves, they struggle a little bit.
yeah, that's
with,
fair. That's fair. I guess if they punch up against like 3-up invuls, like a lot of 3-up invuls,
Yep.
that would make sense.
And the Warlord trait is Bioalchemist. The Warlord has +1 damage to their non-relic weapons, which it's cool.
It's really neat on a Patriarch.
Oh yeah, I think about that. Put it on Patriarch. Okay.
And finally, the relic is the Elixir of Prime Specimen, Twisted Helix models.
This is where it's at.
Increase the attacks, toughness, and wounds characteristic of the bearer by 1. Ooh, boy.
Again, you put that on a Patriarch.
On a Patriarch, yeah.
Like
So
an aberrant or something.
An Abominant.
or Abominant.
Abominant, yeah.
I mean, you could, but I'm not a big fan of Abominants.
Yeah, well, so Abominants buff aberrant units, but aberrant units by themselves are almost like they already have all the buffs, right? They're just really, really good. Yeah, and it's funny because if you go, we'll talk about Vigilus next podcast, but in Vigilus with the Anointed Throng, they can fight on death. So they can fight twice. They can fight on death.
Fight when they die.
So
And
that
you don't have to roll for it. You
Yeah.
don't have to roll like some of these other things on a 3-up. They fight again. They just fight again.
Yep.
So the moral of the story is, if a unit of aberrants charge you, and they are Twisted Helix, and they're part of the Vigilance detachment, they will your unit's gone. There's no reason to even bother with defensive buffs at that point because the unit is gone. Because if they have the CP, they can fight twice, and they can also fight on death. And then fight on death's only 2. So yeah, there's a lot there, but also as a Genestealer Cult player, those aberrants will die. Like once they get targeted and shot to death, I mean, they're tough, but they're not
They're
that tough.
pretty tough.
Yeah.
With, feel no pain in the 2 wounds.
And the
the
-1
reduced
damage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
so they're tough.
concentrated fire will take
But
it out.
if they're out and they've just wiped out a prime alpha unit, your opponent has to kill them. So you have to devote resources
Because they look
to them.
like they should be toughness 5, but they're only T4.
They're only
Only
T4.
T4.
Yeah, so those are the cult creeds and the twisted. And what's interesting is you go through the cult creeds, you can kind of see what they favor. Like Rusted Claw is kind of a bike army. Twisted Helix is really any of the melee ones, but especially for aberrants if you're running that. But it's useful for even Rocksaw guys too.
Yeah.
Well, and as we go through these, you can kind of see how you can mix and match these cults to great effect. Like
That's what I was going to say.
having just a token like Four-Armed Emperor, you know, one in there is always good to have access to
the stratagem, yeah.
for
Yeah.
the stratagem to turn something off, because turning off somebody else's stratagem is just so powerful in this game.
Yep.
It is so powerful. It can throw their strategy kind of on its head.
Unlike some armies where they really, like, especially I'm thinking like the newest armies like Marines, where they really want you to have a single chapter, all of it the same chapter. I think with these cult creeds, because they benefit different types of units, you really probably are going to be having, like, if you're going to run all Genestealer Cult, you might have 3 detachments of 2 or 3
Easily.
different creeds.
It's a very good idea.
To
in
take
fact.
advantage of
Yeah.
the best stuff, because they sort of they're not just, each one benefits it a little bit differently. So yeah, so those are the cult creeds, and that is, let's take a break since we just finished the cult creeds, and let's hear a word from our sponsor, TraderA.com. If you're like most Warhammer players, you own a ton of models. At one time you had big plans for these models, but now they just kind of sit gathering dust, unused and unloved. It's time to clean out your closet of shame. Visit TraderA.com and get cash for your used models. Trader A is run by Captain A, someone who's been in the community a long time and has done a lot to grow the hobby. He's also a personal friend of the show. Unopened boxes, models on a sprue, half-built models, primed, painted, even bits have value. The process is simple. Send him a list of what you have, he'll send you a quote, you pack it up, send in your stuff, and he'll get you cash. You can shop around, but you're going to find that Trader A gives you 40% more than the other guys. You want it quick, you want to get rid of it, visit TraderA.com. Get cash to buy the stuff that you really want. TraderA.com. Sell your models and get your cash quick and easy. All right, and we're back. So we'll talk a little bit about kind of the weaponry that Genestealer Cult has. They have, for their ranged weapons, they have a lot of the standard just Imperial stuff. Last pistols, flamers, grenade launchers, like hand flamers. They have just the generic kind of Imperial stuff. I should say guard stuff. Yeah. Their special weapons are kind of interesting. The Neophyte hybrids, and those are the most human looking of the models.
The guardsman looking guys.
Yeah, you can take 2 of these per 10. So they have a Weber.
There's some interesting builds coming out with Weber spam.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting builds.
Yeah. So that's kind of why they are 16 inches, assault D3, strength 4, 0 AP, 1 damage. They use the strength and toughness of the target. The strength versus toughness of the target. So whichever is lower.
The strength or toughness.
Yeah.
Choose, yeah.
So against a T3 target, because of strength 4, that's pretty good. So the Weber, so I guess because it's 2 per 10, and you can take 2 special weapons or 2 heavy, right? Both.
Mm-hmm.
So
you can take 2 special and 2 heavy.
Yeah, so you can sort of just load up with a bunch of Webers and heavy weapons.
Yep.
And the next one is, I think, the mining laser, which is really good.
You see that one a lot.
Yeah, it's 24 inches. It's a heavy one. Strength 9, AP -3, D6 damage. It's essentially
a mini laser cannon. Yeah.
It's a las cannon at 24 inches. Yeah. But again, they can pop up anywhere they want. So you're essentially 2 per 10. You have 20 of these 4 las cannon shots. That's a lot.
Yeah. Now they've got BS4, and when they emerge from deep strike, they count as moving, so they'll be hitting on 5s. But
unless you take which one is it? Oh, Bladed Cog.
Yes.
Bladed Cog, because Bladed Cog ignores the penalty for moving and shooting heavy weapons.
Right.
And that's why you see, I think, Bladed Cog a lot with these guys.
Yeah, and the Jackal Alphas with Bladed Cog.
Yeah.
Yeah, you basically get to mark a unit, and you get better to hit on it.
Oh, got it. Yep.
Yeah, you're starting to see these more and more because killing something in the first turn is prevalent. And, book missions, there's first strike, so killing something in the first turn is pretty important. And ITC missions, obviously, you want to kill something first turn. You want to kill something every turn. And first turn is not exactly this, when Genestealer Cult do their work. It's 2 through 6.
Yeah.
Choose one whenever they want to after that.
Yeah.
But mining lasers kind of help. I've seen them be used heavily to try to help guarantee that first turn kill because they kind of do struggle with that a little bit.
Right. Yep, for sure. Because they're trying to be tricksy and they need at least a kill each turn. Yeah, that makes sense. Then you have the seismic cannon, which I've never seen.
They're interesting.
Yeah, they're 2 profiles. The first one is 24 inches, 6 shots, heavy 6, strength 3, 0 AP, 1 damage. So 6 shots of just strength 3 stuff.
It's not bad. DACA.
Or at 12 inches. And again, these ranges mean nothing because you can put these wherever you want. That's the first thing to recognize is that ranges in the Genestealer Cult is like, it's just a question of how close you want to get, and usually it's close.
Yeah.
3 shots, strength 6, -1 AP, 2 damage. Oh, this could be good.
Yeah.
With Marines running
around. It gets a bit more into the autocannon range with that.
Yeah.
But really close range.
Yeah, it's close range, 12 inches, but strength 6 is wounding intercessors on 3s. It's -1, but at the same time, especially if they're in the open, they're only going to get a 4-up save.
And 2 damage.
And 2 damage just kills them. That's actually could do work. It's interesting.
Yep.
Now, when you look at Marines now with Primaris running around, 2 damage becomes much more valuable.
2 damage at a premium.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, for sure. If you look at the melee weapons for Genestealer Cult, they're basically they're all very unique to the different units that take them. Mm-hmm. So we can't really cover all of them, except we should cover one that's really awesome, and that is the rock saw.
The rock saw.
Yes.
The stop sign. You have to cover the stop sign.
We'll talk about that too.
With the aberrants, yeah. So what does the rock saw do?
So the rock saw, you can only take it with acolytes. It's ×2 strength, so usually strength 8. Mm-hmm. There's no minus to hit, and it's 2 damage at -4 AP.
Yeah. Gosh.
So like knights just don't get a save.
Yeah.
Unless you have
a bunch of them in a big acolyte squad.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that a lot of their special weapons like that, and including the aberrants, like they're ×2 strength. So that means that every time they get a bonus to strength, like Twisted Helix, it's doubled. So essentially,
then strength 10,
and then strength 10, which is just gross. So a lot of their melee units are really kind of unique to the unit. The melee weapons are unique to the units, but that one I think we wanted to, because they also look cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just like
they're cheap.
And they're cheap.
only 10 points per model.
Yeah,
super cheap.
Yeah. So Genestealer Cult is it's a fragile army. It is just with a lot of stuff, but it hits really hard. It has a lot of short-range firepower. It's got great melee, and you have all the deployment shenanigans, but there are some things that kind of shut it down a little bit. And we should probably talk a little bit about like Marines. They struggle a little bit against Marines right now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, with the Marine book coming out, especially the Phobos units, it kind of has put a little bit of a thorn in Genestealer Cult, players' sides, because their main shtick that we've been talking about for the past hour about them being able to pop up where they want, when they want, and just, gotcha.
They mess with that.
Yeah,
They mess with it.
The Phobos captain has a essentially it's 12-inch range, but he creates a 24-inch bubble of you don't go here.
And it's not a stratagem, so
just
even
has
Four-Armed Emperor can't say anything about it.
Yeah, and the infiltrators.
And even worse, when the infiltrators came out, the infiltrators that can go up the board before the game, and they can string out, 2 inches apart from each other, creating a it's even more than 24-inch bubble. It's probably more like a 36-inch
You're talking
bubble.
when you get to the overlappy pieces, because
Right.
because it's 12 inches from the model.
12.
Basically,
It's 12 inches from the model, but when you do
Which
a whole,
is still huge.
Yeah, that's huge.
you are essentially, and you're able to string out those infiltrators. String them out like along a line of like Genestealer Cult players don't go here.
Yeah.
And keeping in mind that even if they are able to deep strike on something like this unit of Centurions that I'm going to try to wreck. Well, you deep strike down and they ospec scan, they intercept and just you can turn that one off, but still
anything that messes with deployment, and you're seeing a lot more of those. It used to be the Clavis was the first one that said you can't deep strike within 12 feet.
Clamavis.
But now Marines have a ton of it. Like and then you're seeing it a little more with other things too. So that's unfortunate, because especially with missions now with ITC, it's like you're forced as a Genestealer Cult to stay in your zone, and you use the blip markers to kind of, but you don't want to be on the board. You want to go jump up, do your thing, because you're short ranged, and then that's it. So I feel like that any unit that essentially shuts deep strike down within a range is a huge problem for Genestealer Cult.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
and just with the release that Space Marine book with so much of it in there, combined with Ospec Scan, is just
well, and just the bolter fire and the quality of bolter fire. So
bolters will tear through, especially bolters in Tactical Doctrine will just tear through. Genestealer Cult.
Yeah. So, but we're still, and Genestealer Cult kind of has. Marines are a tough one. Anything that denies our deep strike is a tough one, but they still can do work against a lot of other armies.
Absolutely.
And then that's the thing is, we're talking specific types of Marine armies too. But anything with intercept, you have to watch for sure.
Absolutely.
Genestealer Cult, they need to get in close to do their damage.
Yeah.
And anytime something shuts that down, that's a problem for them. If you're playing with like casual friends or something, then you just sort of, that stuff kind of, it's one thing to have a unit that does that to just clear a piece of space, but if you have like multiple units across the board to shut all that down, that's difficult.
Yeah, it's changed the Genestealer Cult builds quite a bit. We're starting to see more bikes. We're starting to see these Ridge Runners that we'll talk about next time. And there's options. It's just gonna have to get a little bit more creative.
Yeah,
get more creative.
Bikes are more okay with starting on the board.
Yeah,
than a lot of
because you can hide them there.
Cult likes to. Yeah. The -1 to hit, higher toughness, 2 wounds.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Genestealer Cult's kind of in a transition period right now. They're becoming slightly different.
We're adapting.
They're adapting. So that's why we thought we'd talk about it, because they're sort of in a funny spot. They still have such great rules, though.
Absolutely.
All right.
A lot of cool tools.
Let's talk about getting started.
Yes.
If somebody's interested in Genestealer Cult, first of all, hopefully you have a lot of money.
Yeah. They're not a cheap army.
They're not.
By any stretch of the imagination.
Every single thing
army.
is plastic, though.
That's true.
Every single thing is plastic.
Everything is
resin.
plastic. No resin, no
metal.
nothing. So the Genestealer Cult Start Collecting box has an Acolyte Icon Ward, 5 Acolyte hybrids, 10 Neophyte hybrids, and 1 Ridge Runner.
It's not a bad deal.
Actually, that's good, because we're seeing builds that have a lot of Neophyte hybrids or Acolyte hybrids.
Probably more acolytes.
Acolytes
Neophytes are good.
But but they're seeing a lot of acolytes, and you're seeing Ridge Runners, and the Ridge Runner is super cool. It's like a
It's a very cool model.
odd thing. It's like a
even without the
trucky
rules.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. So it's not a bad start collecting box. Although the icon word, you really only need one of those. But really, the contents of this start collecting box, let's see, duplicate that by about 20. I'm just kidding. But they need a lot. You need a lot to do Genestealer Cult to get started.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's still some deals out there that you can find. If you can find like
Because Tooth and Claw.
Tooth and Claw had a bunch of aberrants and an abominant in it. I don't know what else Tooth and Claw had in it, but it seemed it was a good deal back in the time, and I'm sure you can find those. The hardest part would be finding a Space Wolf player to split it with.
Yeah.
Because Space Wolf players are pretty rare.
Yeah.
But there's deals out there, and Genestealer Cult is not exactly tip top of the game right now. And usually when that is going on,
you can find some deals.
You can find some really good deals.
If you can, try to find some Acolyte hybrids used.
Yes.
Their box, it's 5 models for, I want to say like upper 30s, $40.
Yeah, the Acolyte.
It's tough.
Oh, the Acolyte hybrids, $40. It's 5 models.
Yeah,
and those are the guys that
you want a lot of them.
You want a lot of them, but the Neophyte hybrids are 10 for $40.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
And you
for
want
a box.
lots of Neophyte hybrids too. You want a lot of Acolyte and Neophyte hybrids. I guess it's just the way it is.
Neophytes hold the space for you. Acolytes take the space for you.
Yeah, and the Neophytes have the shooting, and Acolytes have more of the melee, and there you have it.
The Neophytes get you all your command points that you're using for all these combos that we're talking about.
Yeah. So you'll definitely want to invest in a lot of those, and I think getting started. Okay, the plastic kits are great. There's a lot of them, and also these are detailed models. Like these are not
very good.
I mean,
quality.
they're good quality, but if you could go crazy painting these things, I think you can probably get around with contrast paints. Would do really well, I think, with a lot of these guys.
Wait, why
with
did
the flesh?
Why did you look at me when you said contrast paints?
Because I knew you would. I knew you would react to like, "Hey, what's wrong with contrast paints?"
It's a tool for the toolbox.
It's
Mark.
a great tool. It's a great tool. And aberrants, of course, are 5 for $40. So like all their box sets are like $40 with 5 to 10 models in it. So
when starting out, I think you should get a Brood Coven box because you're gonna want a Patriarch, a Primus, and a Magus.
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
That's a good one. It's a good little like here's your HQs.
Yes.
And here's the leadership of your cult. Like that's cool. Like you have that. So Brood Coven, I think for sure.
Yes. And the Get Started box is not a bad way to go.
Yeah.
For getting some troops in there.
Yep.
And some aberrants. But I think when you're first starting, getting the leadership and troops going is probably the most important.
Yeah.
Especially Acolytes.
Yep.
The Kellermorph, the Kellermorph.
Kellermorph's a pretty cool guy, but he's a little tough to find these days.
Is he?
I struggled to find him, but
Yeah. But I think actually, so you buy the $60 sort of leadership
kill
box.
team thing.
You get to start collecting Genestealer Cult. Maybe you take 2 of them if you can find them in uncertain deals.
Yeah.
But go out there and you're looking for Acolytes.
Yes.
That's essentially what
Acolytes
you're
to
looking for.
start with, and then for harder hitting stuff, you're going to want to get some aberrants.
Yeah, but you'll want 30 troops. You probably want units of 20, really. But you'll want a lot of them.
I've got 2 units of 20 Acolytes, and I definitely need more.
Yep. But, like I said, eBay, a lot of times you'll find sprues for people like parting out boxes and things like that.
Absolutely.
So search eBay.
I would caution individuals about making this their first army.
Yes.
This is not a great first army. Now, if you want a first army that you could expand into this,
Sure.
Guard would be fine.
Yep.
Perfect.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Or Tyranids, for that matter.
Tyranids would be perfect, and you can you can sprinkle in Genestealer Cult as you go. That's an awesome idea. Those would be very fun, flavorful armies with different play styles. Genestealer Cult can get overwhelming quickly. With all the characters and that we'll go into next episode, all the auras and CP regen and adding this and doubling that, and it can get a bit overwhelming pretty quickly, and it is an unforgiving army.
It's hard to learn with.
Yeah.
It's really, really
Definitely.
difficult to
Things
learn
start
with.
to go wrong, and it's really hard to come back from.
Amazing army. I mean, amazing models, amazing play style, but probably not a good choice for a first army.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, you buy the units and then you'll need more. It's almost like buying an orc army. It's like, another box of boys. I could always use another box of boys. There's no reason why I wouldn't ever need another box of boys. So you'd always want to. You'd find yourself buying a ton of like neophytes and acolytes constantly back and forth, depending on the list that you're kind of running.
Right.
So, but yeah, I agree, man. I don't know if this is a beginner army. I mean, it's cool, but I think I
It is by
would
no means a beginner army.
I would do Tyranids first. Tyranids are a little more straightforward.
Tyranids or Astra Militarum.
Yeah, because
either way.
Guard, you can get really good with sort of the shooting aspect of the game. The Tyranids are sort of like very good with the melee, especially if you've got Kraken Genestealers, or any of it really. This is kind of the hybrid of the both, and this feels like something like, and even if you started Genestealer Cult, you'd probably want Tyranids, or you'd want Guard eventually anyways.
So they interact in really cool ways.
Yeah.
Like they cover different bases for sure.
Yeah. So really, I think the best way to get started would be to start Tyranids or Guard.
That's how I did it. I had Tyranids. Genestealer Cult came out. It's like, these guys are cool.
Yeah. And Aberrants are good.
Yeah. How many Flying Hive Tyrants do you have?
Less than I used to.
Oh, did you get rid of some?
No. Some became Malanthropes.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Because I'm not paying Forge World prices.
Yep. But a Tyranid army, you could put together, like I think Seth, he just put 2,000 points. Here it is, and it's a good functional army, and it's really nice combined arms, and there you go.
Absolutely.
You're good there. So, but I mean, if Genestealer Cult really speaks to you, if you really love Genestealer Cult, and we understand,
Start off small if that's what you really want to do
like you said,
as your starter army.
Yeah, start off small. Try to get some very low point games in and play around with the blips, because you could go we're going to see lists that really go all in on like Ridge Runners, or you can go all in on bikes, or all in on Aberrants, or you can go crazy with Neophytes. And before you start getting crazy buying lots of stuff, you really want to understand kind of what you want to get out of this army. So
Absolutely.
Start small, buy the Brood Coven, and then maybe get started, and then probably a couple more boxes of Neophytes or Acolytes, and that is your basic. That's your basic Genestealer Cult core. It's going to be the core that's going to carry you through. And if you want to try Aberrants, try them, but you can wait for those. So cool. All right. Well, that is all we have for part 1 of Genestealer Cult. In our next episode, we're going to go through the units, and we'll go through psychic powers and the warlord traits, and basically the stuff that we didn't cover, although we've been kind of mentioning a lot of this stuff, but we'll go into a little more detail around the units, and we'll talk about a couple different lists that we've seen that are kind of interesting. This is an army that's evolving right now, with the Space Marines kind of putting a crimp in some of their plans. So we'll see kind of how they can shape it up. Thank you for listening to the show. We love to hear from our listeners, so please feel free to message us on Facebook or email us at thebattlehosts@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us, you can help us in a few different ways. You can tell your friends about us. You can like us on Facebook. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can leave a review on iTunes. It does help to boost our listening audience. Finally, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thebattlehosts. For as little as $1 a month, you can help us with the cost of running the show and staying engaged with the 40K community. Thanks for listening to Battlehosts.
Remember to be a better gamer.
And build a better community.
Good night.